Hi, welcome to 5 Minutes of Torah with the BI Rabbi. I'm Rabbi Adam Stein. One of the things I spoke about the other day, last Shabbat, in a drash, was John Lewis, a really towering figure of conscience, of civil rights, of freedom. He passed away just recently, and the funeral was a couple days ago. He was called the conscience of the Congress in the U.S. He was really a part of the civil rights movement down there, marching with Dr. Martin Luther King, and really involved from that time all the way up until just days ago. And yesterday, the New York Times published an essay that he wrote before he died with the intent that it would be published after his passing. And I want to share some with you. It's just so powerful. He says, they titled it, "Together You Can Redeem the Soul of Our Nation." It's not our nation up here in Canada, but I think his words apply so much to people in North America and beyond throughout the world. He says, "Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe." And that's what he did. That's what so many people we look up to do, and that's what we need to do. He says, "I acknowledge my time here has come to an end on earth, and I want you to know that in my last days and hours, you inspired me." He's just talking to people in this time of need, in the pandemic, in the reckoning with racism. People have come together and helped each other. He said, "You filled me with hope about the next great chapter of the story of this society when you used your power to make a difference in our community." He said, "Millions of people motivated simply by human compassion laid down the burdens of division." That's something we need in this world right now. He said, "Around the country and the world, you set aside race and class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity." Human dignity it's a phrase in Hebrew we say kavod habriot. It's not just a philosophical and values-laden concept. It's actually part of Jewish law. And John Lewis goes on and he talks about George Floyd and Emmett Till from decades ago, and Rayshard Brooks and Breonna Taylor. And he talks about how he was influenced seeing atrocities, but also inspired by people like Dr. Martin Luther King, by his parents, by his brothers and sisters and cousins, people who couldn't protect him completely from oppression, but people who inspired him nonetheless. He said, as he was searching for a way out, and some might say a way in, he heard that voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence, the really holy path of moving forward past oppression or trying to push against it without violence. He says democracy is not a state, it is an act, and each generation must do its part to build what we call the beloved community, nations and societies at peace with themselves. There's so much wisdom to be had in those who have spent decades fighting for justice. He says towards the end, "Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart, and not just stand up for what you truly believe," as he said in the beginning, but to really do what is right. And he says, "It is your turn to let freedom ring," one of the famous lines from Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, in this week's Parashat V'etchanan, the Shema shows up, the real doctrine, the credo of Judaism about God being one. And also, not just the Shema in this week's Torah portion, but the 10 Commandments as well. And if the 10 Commandments teach us something, and Christians around the world who revere the 10 Commandments as well, it's that honoring our parents, not killing, not robbing, treating people well, these are the things we need to hold up in our communities, in our society. I just want to end with a short story that really illustrates what John Lewis and so many towering figures teach us, and our Torah, of course. There was a guy in Nashville in Tennessee, and I read this story in the past week. He's a young guy, 29. His family moved to this neighborhood in Nashville decades ago in 1966 when his grandmother bought a home there. But 54 years after his grandmother moved there, he felt like It wasn't even safe for him to take a walk in his own neighborhood without fearing for his life. As a black man, he wrote, "Yesterday I wanted to walk around my neighborhood." He wrote this on Facebook. "But the fear of not returning to my home, to my family alive, kept me on my front porch." To make a long story short, people saw his post and they shared it and they shared it. And within a day or two, 300 people were coming to his home to take a walk around the block, or 2 or 3, with him. What an amazing story of coming together. Neighbors who didn't even know each other, neighbors who didn't know that there was someone scared in their midst to whom they could reach out. So I hope that in this difficult time that drags on and on, not only that we'll be able to come out of it soon, but that we'll come out of it better and closer. Shabbat Shalom.